Welcome to Salsido Paranormal. I'm your host, James Salsido, and tonight I'm reading and reviewing the Book of the Damned by Charles Fort. As always, you can find all episodes of the show, along with links to social media, ways to listen, and ways to support the show at the website, and that is salsidoparanormal.com. That's SALSIDO paranormal.com. There are many ways to support the show. You can share the show with others and rate and review it on your favorite podcast platform. You can sign up for the Patreon feed and get all the extra content there. And you can check out the merchandise store and get all kinds of shirts and some other items with designs made by friends of the show. Please follow other friends of the show. That would be Jen, the Arcane Observer, who is the co-host of the show on Saturdays when she's able to join me and has her own channel. And Ricky of the Anything is Possible podcast and show. He does a couple of shows a week live, and then I think other ones as well. And I'm usually with him on his Sunday night shows when he talks all things paranormal. And of course, Michael Strange, host of Troubled Minds Radio and the Troubled Minds Radio Network, KUAP Digital Broadcasting, where you can hear all kinds of shows as well as my own online 24/7 for free. And I keep doing this. I forgot to mention, as always, support for the show is never expected but always appreciated. And some things about what I'm going to be doing here in this episode. The words of Fort and his thoughts may not match our own, yours or mine, so be aware of that. Also, there may be some things in here that he talks about that were mysterious to him at the time when these books were written, which was in the early 1900s, and that are not so mysterious to people now. So just be aware these books were written a little while ago. Also, I apologize in advance for mispronouncing any words or names, especially as some of those words and names are not always in English. So I think that takes care of everything, so I can get back to this book here. And we'll see how far we can get in this episode. So I'm going to reread the last line I did last time. Excuse me. And that says Science, as in the publication, July 31st, 1896. That according to a newspaper account, Mr. W.R. Brooks, director of the Smith Observatory, had seen a dark round object pass rather slowly across the moon in a horizontal direction. In Mr. Brooks' opinion, it was a dark meteor. In Science, September 14th, 1896, a correspondent writes that, in his opinion, it may have been a bird. We shall have no trouble with the meteor and bird mergers if we have observations of long duration and estimates of size up to hundreds of miles. Excuse me. As to the body that was seen by Brooks, there is a note from the Dutch astronomer Mueller in the Scientific American 75-251 that upon April 4th, 1892, he had seen a similar phenomenon. In Science Gossip, NS 3-135, are more details of the Brooks object. Apparent diameter about 1/40th of the moon's moon's disk. Did I get that right? Of the moons. So the moon's disk crossed in 3 or 4 seconds. The writer in Science Gossip says that on June 27th, 1896, at 1 o'clock in the morning, he was looking at the moon with a 2-inch achromatic power 44. I'm guessing that means a telescope of some kind. When a long black object sailed past from west to east, the transit occupying 3 or 4 seconds. He believed this object to be a bird. There was, however, no fluttering motion observable in it. In the different language, something about astronomy, number 3477, Dr. Brendel of a place in Pomerania writes that Postmaster Ziegler and other observers had seen a body about 6 feet in diameter crossing the sun's disk. The duration here indicates something far from the earth and also far from the sun. This thing was seen a quarter of an hour before it reached the sun. Time in crossing the sun was about an hour. After leaving the sun, it was visible an hour. I think he's a vast black vampire, going back to this creature, for is kind of somewhat joking about, maybe somewhat not, I'm not sure. A vampire that sometimes broods over this earth and other bodies. Communication from Dr. F.B. Harris, Popular Astronomy 20-398, that upon the evening of January 27th, 1912, Dr. Harris saw upon the moon an intensely black, in quotation marks, an intensely black object, close quotation marks. He estimated it to be 250 miles long and 50 miles wide. In quotation marks again, the object resembled a crow poised as near as anything, in quotation marks. Clouds then cut off observation. Dr. Harris writes, in quotation marks, I cannot but think that a very interesting and curious phenomenon happened, close quotation marks. And that appears to be the end of a chapter. So that's all, again, Fort's not just talking about massive UFOs now, he's talking about possibly entities. And so that's really fascinating to me. Let's see here. And this says, chapter 15, he says, short chapter coming now, and it's the worst of them all. I think it's speculative. It's a lapse from our usual pseudo-standards. I think it must mean that the preceding chapter was very efficiently done, and that now, by the rhythm of all quasi-things, which can't be real things if they're rhythms, because a rhythm is an appearance that turns into its own opposite and then back again. But now, to pay up, we're what we weren't. He is amazing at run-on sentences and paragraphs. Anyway, a short chapter, and I think we'll fill in with several points in intermediatism. A puzzle. If it is our acceptance that out of the negative absolute, the positive absolute is generating itself, recruiting or maintaining itself via a third state or our own quasi-state, it would seem that we're trying to conceive of universalness, manufacturing more universalness from nothingness. Take that up yourself if you're willing to run the risk of disappearing with such velocity that you'll leave an incandescent train behind and risk being infinitely happy forever, whereas you probably don't want to be happy. I'll sidestep that myself and try to be intelligible by regarding the positive absolute from the aspect of realness instead of universalness. Recalling that by both realness and universalness, we mean the same state, or that else because there is nothing else. I missed the line. Or that which does not merge away into something else because there is nothing else. There we go. A lot of these parts of his books, I don't understand so well, but that's okay. So the idea is that out of unrealness instead of nothingness, realness instead of universalness is via our own quasi-state, manufacturing more realness. Just so, but in relative terms, of course, all imaginings that materialize into machines or statues, buildings, dollars, paintings, or books in paper and ink are graduations from unrealness to realness in relative terms. It would seem then that intermediateness is a relation to between the positive absolute and the negative absolute. But the absolute cannot be the related. Of course, a confession that we can't really think of it at all. If here we think of a limit to the unlimited, doing the best we can, and encouraged by the reflection that we can't do worse than has been done by metaphysicians in the past, we accept that the absolute can't be the related. So then that our quasi-state is not a real relation if nothing in it is real. On the other hand, it is not an unreal relation if nothing in it is unreal. It seems thinkable that the positive absolute can, by means of intermediateness, have a quasi-relation, or be only quasi-related. Oops, hang on. Okay, I was clicked on something, and I didn't mean to do that. And now I lost my spot. Hang on here. Or be the unrelated in final terms, or at least not be the related in final terms. I think I was getting so annoyed there, I tensed up and I accidentally clicked on the screen. That was fun. Anyway, as to free will and intermediatism, there we go. Same answer as to everything else. By free will, we mean the independence or that which does not merge away from something else. I'm sorry, into something else. So in intermediateness, neither free will nor slave will, but a different approximation for every so-called person toward one or the other of the extremes. The hackneyed way of expressing this seems to me to be the acceptable way. If in intermediateness there is only the paradoxical, that we're free to do what we have to do. I am not convinced that we make a fetish of the preposterous. I think our feeling is that in first gropings there's no knowing what will afterward be acceptable. I think that if an early biologist heard of birds that grow on trees, he should record that he had heard of birds that grow on trees, then let sorting over of data occur afterward. The one thing that we try to tone down, but that is to a great degree unavoidable, is having our data all mixed up like Long Island and Florida in the minds of early explorers, American explorers. My own notion is that this this whole book is very much like a map of North America in which the Hudson River is set down as a passage leading to Siberia. We think of Monstrator and Melanicus, and of a world, these are creations of his own, we're talking about in his writing here, of a world that is now in communication with this earth. So aliens and spacecraft in a way. If so, secretly, with certain esoteric ones upon this earth. Whether that world's Monstrator and Monstrator's Melanicus must be the subject of later inquiry. It would be a gross thing to do. Solve up everything now and leave nothing to our disciples. I have been very much struck with phenomena of cup marks. They look to me like symbols of communication, but they do not look to me like means of communication between some of the inhabitants of this earth and other inhabitants of this earth. My own impression is that some external force has marked with symbols rocks of this earth from far away. Let's see, okay, we still got that. I do not think that cup marks are inscribed communications among different inhabitants of this earth, because it seems too unacceptable that inhabitants of China, Scotland, and America should all have conceived of the same systems. Cup marks are strings of cup-like impressions in rocks. Sometimes there are rings around them, and sometimes they have only semicircles. Great Britain, excuse me if I can talk, Great Britain, America, France, Algeria, Circassia. Not sure what that place is. Palestine. They're virtually everywhere, except in the far north, I think. In China, cliffs are dotted with them. Upon a cliff in or near Lake Como, there is a maze of these markings. In Italy and Spain and India, they occur in enormous numbers. Given that a force, say like electric force, could, from a distance, mark such a substance as rocks, as from a distance of hundreds of miles, selenium can be marked by telephotographers. But I am of two minds. The lost explorers from somewhere and an attempt from somewhere to communicate with them. So a frenzy of showering of messages toward this earth in the hope that some of them would mark rocks near the lost explorers. Or that somewhere upon this earth there is an a special rocky surface or receptor or polar construction or a steep conical hill upon which for ages have been received messages from some other world, but that at times messages go astray and mark substances perhaps thousands of miles from the receptor. Let's see here. Okay. The lost my spot again. Where is it? Okay. That perhaps forces behind the history of this earth have left upon the rocks of Palestine and England and India and China records that may someday be deciphered of their misdirected instructions to certain esoteric ones. Order of the Freemasons, the Jesuits, and so let me see here. He says, I emphasize the row formation of cup marks. I think that'll have to do it, though. Yeah, I think we're out of time. So now we're getting into something else entirely, but still fascinating. And I'm really curious to see where he's going to go with this. And I just love the whole way he's talking about other species, other beings, possibly having interactions with all kinds of places all over this planet, leaving marks and all these other things. So he's sort of gone from out in space to anomalous things out there to these anomalous marks that he found reports of, apparently all over the place. And I'm guessing that's what we will get to the next time we record one of these episodes in this series of reviewing the works of Charles Fort. So thank you all for being here and listening, and I will talk to you all next time on Salsido Paranormal. Take care.